Hello there, I'm Jeannie Martinson, publisher of Wood Dragon Books, and today I'm with the author of the Cartwright Men Marry book, brand new novel by Monique Desrosiers. And Monique is going to read a segment or two from her book, and then we can hear what it's all about. So where would you like to start, Monique?
I'm actually going to start with chapter 1. February 7, 1863. The air was crisp. The horses' hooves crunched on the snow. The exhale of breath from both man and beast could be seen. On an exceptionally warm February day, Ben Cartwright was heading home after a week in Sacramento. Because of the pleasant weather, he had chosen an alternate route through the mountains. He had never ventured this way before and thought it was high time he did so. Nothing like new scenery to tickle his curiosity. And what a sight it was to behold. The snow on the tops of the surrounding mountains glistened in the shining sun. The valley below was heavy with fresh snow. Trees everywhere were peeking out of their white covers. He stopped the horse and inhaled deeply of the refreshing air. He had never seen such a peaceful place. He closed his eyes, but even then that didn't keep out the brightness warming his face. He was not a man who traveled the mountains on a regular basis, especially in winter. He was aware of the dangers from mountain lions and wolves. Luckily, the bears would still be in hibernation, even though the sun was warming up the days to almost 45 degrees Fahrenheit. He thought he was prepared to face anything he might encounter. Besides, he should be in flatter territory in a day or so, where it would be easier to see approaching dangers. He hadn't counted on an avalanche. His beloved horse Diamond sensed the danger seconds before Ben did and reacted. The horse pulled against the bit, desperately fighting Ben's commands, but Ben was dominant and determined and held the animal to the path he had chosen. "What's wrong, Diamond? There are no snakes up here. Do you smell a big cat? Don't worry. I'll protect us." And he reached for his rifle, scanning the terrain for danger. Diamond jumped when he heard the pop of the mountain releasing its snow, triggering Ben to drop his rifle. Both men and animal could feel the ground trembling. Diamond could only do what came naturally. He tried to outrun it. Ben grabbed and hung onto the saddle horn for dear life. He couldn't hear Diamond neighing, and Diamond couldn't hear Ben's commands. The noise from the oncoming snow and uprooted trees was deafening. The impending white blanket was quicker than Diamond could ever be. The horse tried to climb it, slide down with it, kick it, but eventually panicked. He was so wild that he bucked Ben right off. Ben tried to get a hold of something, anything, but couldn't help falling and rolling. He tried to climb up and over the snow. When a tree branch caught him, ripped his sleeve right off and scratched his entire left arm, he winced at the pain and yelled out, but continued to try to climb, using the branch for leverage. He couldn't see where he was going. Everything was a blur. Dark objects passed by, mixed with snow. Trees, he thought. He fought to head upwards to the lighter side of the moving snow and debris. No time to pray, to panic, to think, to thank God, or for last thoughts of his sons. Another branch came tumbling down and knocked him on the head. He fell for the last time, arms and legs flailing in the air, and lost consciousness. Chapter 2, we are introduced to Barbara, the mountain woman. She is on her way to get something like roadkill from the animals that might get caught in an avalanche. She is running out of food, and she's on a hunt for more food. So she's on her horse heading towards where there might be an avalanche aftermath. She snapped back to alertness with a sinking feeling in her gut. She had heard a loud bang and signaling a release of snow high up on her right side. Had she gone too far? Was she to be a victim of the avalanche? In a flash, she knew that if she perished, no one would ever know. But she couldn't dwell on that thought right now. It was so loud, the earth was shaking. It was frightening. The horse had been antsy and was now panicking. She managed to control him. quickly circling and moving back 30 yards to safety. She was facing west again and could hear nothing but the rumbling of the tumbling snow and rocks. Unbelievably, the sound was getting louder. Even thunder had never been this loud, and here in the mountains she had heard some glorious thunder. She had never been this close to an avalanche's full fury. She could never have imagined such a noise. She could feel the earth moving, and she could see the majestic trees ahead, reluctantly giving up their grip on the thawing ground. Louder. Giant trees were being ripped off at their stumps and tossed down the slope as if they were twigs. Her ears overfilled with the noise, and she covered them with both hands. At the edge of the opening where the trees had once stood, she gawked at the sight of rolling snowballs racing down to the mess collected at the bottom. She released her ears, and her head turned swiftly to follow a movement on her right in the last of the tumbling debris. She hoped it was a big animal like a deer, but instead came to a sinking conclusion that it was the waving, gloved hand of a human being. Chapter 25, April 1865. By the end of the first week, it was determined that the two front-legged injured calves were going to make a full recovery. The back-legged injured calf had hardly made any progress. Evelyn promised to keep coming back every couple of days to care for that one, and then her job would be done. Evelyn and Haas were enjoying each other's company very much. Time passed so quickly when they were together that one evening she had stayed at the barn longer than usual. Haas offered to escort her home. I don't see why that would be necessary. I am just about a half hour later than, Haas interrupted. Miss Evelyn, those trespassing trappers are still out there. I would feel terrible if something were to happen to you. No, I insist. She didn't argue. They would have an extra 15 minutes or so to spend together. They got on their horses and took off toward the northwest. Evidently, Haas wasn't too worried, as he only carried his holstered gun and left his rifle behind. She smiled to herself, wondering if he was only looking for a reason to spend more time with her, or if the rustlers were a real concern. When her family's home came into view, Haas tilted his hat, bade her good night, and said, "See you tomorrow, Miss Evelyn, same time." "Good night, Haas. Thank you for looking after me. See you tomorrow." And she quickened her pace toward the barn. Haas turned his horse after a long last look at her retreating figure. 5 minutes later, he was still deep in his thoughts of Evelyn when he heard a calf bawling on his right. "Whoa," he ordered his horse and dismounted. He tethered him to a bush and stood still. There was no denying that noise. It was either a hurt calf hiding there in the bushes or one that had become separated from the herd. He stepped forward carefully, wishing he had a lantern. The bushy area grew into a forest the further west you went towards the mountain. When he came upon the calf, he was disappointed to find that no matter how frightened it was of him, it could not run away because its hind leg was caught in a trap. "Dat burn it," he said, as he crouched down to release it. Whomp. Haas may not have heard the butt of the rifle coming down hard, but he felt it on the back of his head. He dropped to the ground unconscious. Chapter 26. "How are the calves?" asked her mother, Mary Lynn, as Evelyn entered the small 4-room house. Her 14-year-old sister was helping out with supper, while the 12-year-old was looking after the 4-year-old, and the 9-year-old was playing quietly by herself. "Two of them are doing great. Still not much change in the other one, though." "Where is your medicine bag?" a surprised Mary Lynn asked. "Oh, I guess I left it." "Oh, no. I didn't leave it in the barn. Haas has it. He insisted on carrying it." "Don't worry, I'll get it tomorrow." "Why?" "You'd better go after him and get it now. You have to go see Mr. Norton about his horse first thing in the morning," smiled a very proud Mary Lynn. Another neighbor who had learned about Evelyn's success with the Cartwright's cattle had decided to have her tend to his sick animal in her father's absence. "Really? Mr. Norton asked that I come take care of his horse?" She was pleased, even though she knew that if her pa was home, she wouldn't be called on. "I'm leaving now. He's 5 minutes ahead of me already. I'll hurry, Ma." Chapter 27. I can't move him. He's too heavy, Danny. He ain't seen our faces. Can't we just leave him and go? Asked the younger man. He had disarmed Hoss and had been ordered to drag the big guy back to their camp 100 yards further into the bush. Nah, can't do that, Al, said Danny, wiping Hoss's blood off the butt of his rifle. Billy Bob ain't gonna like it. Me neither. Nah, we either drag him back to camp or wake him up and force him to walk there by himself. All right, I'll get a bucket of water, said Al. Moments later, a wet Hoss, roused and at gunpoint, got up and walked in the direction the men told him to. Danny was by then leading Hoss's horse with the calf strapped on the saddle. Billy Bob was expecting them. Al had told him when he had come to fetch the bucket of water. Well, well, what do we have here? You're trying to steal my calf? Hoss didn't say anything. What's the matter? Can't get your tongue? Billy Bob poked Hoss in the ribs. That's a Cartwright calf because you're on Cartwright land, Hoss replied. Is that so? Well, then don't bother us any. You know, mister, those Cartwrights could make themselves a lot of money. Don't they know those Chinese men down in Frisco pay a lot of money for veal? I kind of have a liking for it myself, but I like money better. I'll eat the meat from the mothers that choose not to abandon their young'un. Thus the reason for stealing calves. Hoss didn't like it, not one bit. He had to get himself out of this predicament and bring those men to justice. He didn't know how yet. He hoped he would have the chance to figure it out. Every few minutes, the men would look his way and then talk among themselves. Hoss thought, they sure are agitated at being discovered by me. I figure the odds of me being left behind alive are pretty slim. He was still dazed when they tied him to a tree and went about their business of muzzling and caging the calf. He knew his time was running out. He tried to ignore his growing headache and think on freeing his hands.
Thank you so much, Monique. I think that anyone listening, and of course, I've read the book many, many times in its different iterations, and I cannot believe how intriguing this book still is to me as a reader. Even the last reading through before we sent it to the final galley really moved me. And there's a lot of action and there's romance and it pulls at your heart and it pulls at your mind. It's a very intriguing book, and I think many of the readers that eventually have it in their hands are going to really enjoy it. We're going to complete this segment, and when we come back, we will be having Q&A from anyone on the call who wants to ask Monique questions.